Okay, so let's go over the classwork. So question 1. Match each expression at the left to an equivalent expression at the right. So when I look at the expressions on the left and I look at the expressions on the right, I don't see anything that is similar, but we can solve them. We can solve the equations on the expressions on the left. So let's see how that works. For A, I have 4 plus minus 1. So that means that the 1 can be positive or negative. So 4 plus 1, 4 minus 1. 4 plus 1 is 5. 4 minus 1 is 3. So let's see if we can find 5 and 3 on the right side. Yep, we find number 4. So the expression 8 matches with 4, with expression 4, not number 4. Okay? So B. B says that 10 plus or minus the square root of 4. What is the square root of 4? The square root of 4 is 2, right? So I can write this as 10 plus minus 2. So now I can do 10 plus 2 and 10 minus 2. 10 plus 2 equals 12. And 10 minus 2 equals 8. So let's see if we can find 12 and 8 on the right side. Yes, we can find 12 and 8. So this expression will match this expression. So C is negative 6 plus minus 11. So I can have negative 6 plus 11 and negative 6 minus 11. Okay? So negative 6 plus 11 is 5. Positive 5. Negative 6 minus 11 is negative 17. So let's see if we can find positive 5 and negative 17. So here we have negative 17 and positive 5, so I know that C matches 1. So now I have 4 plus minus the square root of 10. So we learn how to do the square root of 10. It will be a decimal. So you will set up 4 plus, then you write the square root of 10, and then you will write 4 minus the square root of 10. So we cannot, there's no number that we multiply and you can get the square root of 10, but it will be a decimal. The next one is the square root of 16 plus minus the square root of 2. So for this one, we know that the square root of 16 is 4 plus minus the square root of 2. So the square root of 2 will be a decimal that we did in the problems, on the instruction problems. So you will set up 4 plus the decimal answer for square root of 2 and 4 minus the decimal of the square root of 2. And that's it. Or you can leave it as 4 plus the square root of 10 and 4 minus the square root of 10. And we know that that is number 5. So if we know that's number 5, and this one can also be 4 plus the square root of 2 and 4 minus the square root of 2. So that will be this. So E matches with 2. So that's number 1. Question 2. X squared minus 10x plus 8 equals 0. So for this one, it says find the exact solution by completing the square. So we need to use the plus and minus notation. So here I have the steps that we need to follow to complete the square. So I am going to write down the equation on the bottom so we can work on it. The first thing it says, cancel the constant term number on the left side. So we need to cancel 8. Okay, so we know that is positive 8, and to cancel I need to subtract 8. So 8 minus 8 is 0. So now I have x squared plus 10x equals negative 8. So I have done step 1. Step 2, divide b by 2 and square the result. So we have learned that the quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c. So b is the number that is attached, is the coefficient of x. So in this case, b is 10. So we will divide 10 by 2, which is 5, and then we will square the answer, and that will be 25. 5 squared is 5 times 5 equals 25. So this number, so we did step 2, and now step 3, add the answer to both sides of the equation. So I am going to add 25 to both sides of the equation. So now I have x squared plus 10x plus 25 equals 25 minus 8 is 17. So now I need to find out if this is a perfect square. So because I use these numbers and I have 5 plus 5 equals 10 and 5 times 5 is 25, I know this is a perfect square. So when you do that and you look at the factors, I know that I multiply x times x to get x squared. And when I divide 10x into two parts, equal parts, I know that I have 5x and 5x. So I know that I have to multiply x times 5 to get 5x, and x times 5 over here to get 5x. So these are my factors. And when I multiply 5 times 5, I get 25. So these are my factors and they're the same, so it's a perfect square. So I can write x plus 5 squared equals 17. So now I am going to I need to do the last step, which says square root both sides and solve for x. So I will square root both sides. So the square root cancel with the square, And I will solve the rest on this top in this part here. So I have x plus 5 equals the square root of 17. So we know that we do not have a number that we can multiply and get the square root of 17. So the only thing we need to do now is to solve for x. And to solve for x, I need to leave x by itself. So I will subtract 5 to cancel 5, and I will subtract 5 from this side. So now I have x equals -5 plus minus 17. And that's our answer for number 2. So when you look here, x equals -5 plus minus 17 will be the first one. For this one, it says find the exact solution by completing the square. So we will do the same thing that we did in the previous problem. So in this case, the first step is cancel the constant, the number on the left side. So I know that I don't have to do that step because the constant is on this side already. So that step was done for me. So I'm going to write the equation on the bottom so we can work on it. So now I have to do step 2. Step 2, divide b by 2 and square the answer. And again, remember the square root, the quadratic formula is ax squared plus bx plus c. So b is the number 14. So we will divide the number 14 by 2. It will give us 7, and then we'll square root 7, and that will give us 49. This number is part of our next step. Add the answer to both sides. So we did this one, and now we'll add the answer to both sides. So now I am going to add 49, and I'm going to add 49 on this side. So my equation will be x squared plus 14x plus 49 equals -45 plus 49 is 4. So now I need to figure out if this is a perfect square. So when you check on that, you know that you multiply x by x to get x squared. And you need to divide 14 in 2 equal parts. So that means that we will put 7x and 7x. So now I know that 7x plus 7x equals 14x, and I know that I multiply 7 times 7 to get 49. So these are my factors. I have x plus 7 and x plus 7. So now I can write my perfect square. X plus 7 squared equals 4. The next step says square root both sides and solve for x. So I will square root both sides. So the square root cancels with the square. And now I have x plus 7. And on this side, the square root of 4 is 2. Plus minus 2. You can't see the minus. Let's fix that. Plus minus 2. Okay, so now I need to solve for x. So I am going to set up two different equations. One will be x plus 7 equals 2, and the other one will be x plus 7 equals minus 2. So that way I will have both solutions that I need. Never forget to put the plus and minus, because you know this is always plus and minus, because you can have negative 2 times negative 2, it will be 4, and 2 times 2 is also 4. So it's always plus and minus. So now I need to solve for x. To solve for x, I need to leave x by itself. So I will cancel x by subtracting x on both sides. So positive 7 minus 7, 7 minus 7 is 0. So now I have x equals, so 2 minus 7 is negative 5. That is one answer. So now I will do the same on this side. I need to subtract 7, and I need to subtract 7. So 7 minus 7 equals 0. Now I have x equals negative 7 minus 2 is negative 9. So negative 2 minus 7 is negative 9. So which one of the answers above is negative 5, negative 9? So we have negative 5 and negative 9 on that answer. So let's check the next problem. For the next problem, we will have to use the quadratic formula. So when you use the quadratic formula, you will need to remember that the quadratic equation is written as in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c. You will need a, you will need b, and you will need c. So in order to use the quadratic formula, your equation always needs to be equal to 0. So the first thing you need to do, if your equation is not equal to 0, you have to make it equal to 0. Then you will identify the values of a, b, and c. So on this one, a is actually 1, because it is always 1 because we have 1x squared. We don't have 2x squared, we don't have 3x squared, we have 1x squared. So that will be 1. B is 4, positive 4, and C is negative 5. So now you will just plug in the numbers on the quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula is the opposite of b plus minus the square root of b minus 4 times a times c divided by 2 times a. So always know that this whole thing on the bottom, this whole thing is divided by 2 times a. Okay? It's not just one part, it's the whole entire thing. So let's go over this process. This is just an example. So the first thing we will do is plug in the numbers. So the formula has the opposite of b, the opposite of b. What did I write on b? I Miss Austin, not paying attention. Oops. Let's fix b. So b is 4. So the opposite of b is 4. The square root of b minus 4 times a is 1, and I can put a on the bottom as well. and then I have negative 5. So now I can multiply, I can work on this equation. So now we need to do the math. We don't have any letters, we only have numbers, so now we need to do the math. So this, the opposite of b is negative 4. Because b is 4, now b is going to be negative 4. So I'm going to start writing the, the solution on this side whenever it lets me. Okay, so x equals negative 4 plus minus. So the first thing I'm going to do is solve whatever it's inside the square root. So 4 squared is 16. So when you put on the calculator 4 times 1 times negative 5, so 4 times negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. Negative 4 times 5 is 20. So, but negative 4 times negative 5 is positive 20. So when you multiply a negative times a negative, you get a positive. So 4 times 1 times negative 5 is negative 4. So when you multiply all these numbers, you get positive 20. So now I don't forget to put everything that is going to be divided by 2 times a, and 2 times a is 2. So now my next step, I am going to solve whatever it's inside the square root. So this will be my next step. So now I have x equals negative 4 plus minus 16 plus 20 is 36. The square root of 36 divided by 2. So I'm doing this step by step so you can see how it works. Actually, I might need this space. So I have x equals negative 4 plus minus. So the square root of 36 is 6 divided by 2. So now I need to still do the math, but I'm going to do negative 4 plus 6 and negative 4 minus 6. So let's set up two different equations. So one will be x equals negative 4 plus 6 divided by 2, and the other one will be x equals negative 4 minus 6 divided by 2. So now I have negative 4 plus 6. I know that it is 2. And we put 2 on the bottom. 2 divided by 2 is 1. So x equals 1. That is one of your answers. So on this one, we have negative 4 minus 6. That is negative 10. So negative 10 divided by 2, x will equal negative 5. So that is your second answer. So you use the quadratic formula to solve for the two solutions that you need. So this is another example, another strategy that you can use to solve quadratic equations. And we use the quadratic formula for certain times that you're going to learn next week. So now I have question 4. So for question 4, to solve using the quadratic formula, you must first correctly identify a, b, and c from the standard form of the quadratic equation. So we talked about that before. So you have A, you have B. B is always the number that is the coefficient of x. And you have C is the constant, is the number that's by itself without any letter. All right, so we know that A is -4. We know that B is 16, +16. And we know that C is 64. So this is the first step for you to be able to solve quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. Question 5. Identify A, B, and C in the following equations. So now we have the same equation. We have a different equation, but this time it is not equal to 0. So the first step for you to solve a quadratic equation using the quadratic formula, it is to have the equation equal to 0. So since this one is not equal to 0, we'll have to do that before we identify A, B, and C. So I have 42 and I need this side to cancel. So in order to cancel 42, I need to subtract 42 so I can have 0. And I will subtract 42 on this side. So this is tricky, but you have to pay attention when you look at the quadratic equation. So x squared plus 14x minus 42 equals 0, because this is 0 now. So that is, now you can identify A, B, and C. So A is 1. A is 1. A will be here. This is B and this is C. So B is 14 and C is -42. Always remember to set your equation equal to 0. So on this one, on question 6, we need to find the two solutions using the quadratic formula. Our equation is not equal to 0. So we cannot do anything until we get the equation equal to 0. So to do that, I need to cancel 10. So if I have +10, I am going to subtract 10 from both sides. So that way, the right side is equal to 0. So I'm going to write the equation on the bottom. So 9x squared plus 12x. So now I have +5 minus 10. That will give me -5 equals 0. So that is my equation. And now the equation is equal to 0 and I can find A, B, and C. So I know that this is A, this is B, and this is C. So A is 9, B is 12, and C is -5. So now I am going to put the values of A, B, and C in the quadratic formula. So now I am going to put, so -b, so that's the opposite of B. So B is 12 and B is 12. Minus 4 times A. A is 9. And I can put A here as well. And now I need to put -5. for C. So now that I have everything ready, I can do the math. Because I don't have any letters, I just need to solve. So the first thing I'm going to do, as always, is solve inside the square root, this part. I always solve inside the square root before I can do anything else. So I am going to write it again here. Why don't you want to work? Okay. X equals, the opposite of 12 is -12, plus, minus, and now I am going to solve the square root. So the square root of 12 is 144. The square root, no, the square. 12 squared is 144. Then we're going to multiply -4 times 9 times -5. Remember, these two numbers are negative, so my answer will be positive. So -4 times 9 times -5 is 180. So now I know it's positive, so I'm going to put positive 180. And I am going to do this whole thing divided by 2 times 9 is 18. So still, I need to work on the square root, whatever is inside the square root, before I can do anything else. So now I have 180, 144 plus 180. So I am going to continue that over here. So x equals -12 plus and minus 144 plus 180 is 324 divided by 18. So now I need to figure out if 324 has a square root, if it's a perfect square. So I put on my calculator and I know that the square root of 324 is 18. So now I am going to write the whole equation again, and the square root of 24 is 18, and now I'm going to divide by the number 18 on the bottom. Okay, so we did the same thing. We did the square root, which is 18. So now I'm going to set up two equations, one that will be plus 18 and one that will be minus 18. So now I have x equals -12 plus 18 divided by 18, and x equals -12 minus 18 divided by 18. So when I do -12 plus 18, I get 6. X equals 6 divided by 18. So for this one, I always need to simplify. Whenever it's possible, I need to simplify. So I am going to divide 6 by 6 because I know 16 6 is a factor of 16. So now 6 divided by 6 is 1, and 18 divided by 6 is 3. So x equals 1/3. You might want to write that in case your teacher may not give you points if you don't write that. So now I have x equals -12 minus 18, and that will give me x equals -30 divided by 18. So I also need to simplify. I know 6 is a factor of 30 and 6 is a factor of 18. So I will simplify, divide by 6, divided by 6. So I have x equals negative 30 divided by 6 is negative 5. 18 divided by 6 is 3. So x equals negative 5 over 3. So we need two answers, and we have our two answers. One answer is x equals 1/3, and the other answer is x equals negative 5 over 3. So those are the two answers. For this one, I will let you go ahead and use the example we did on the previous problem to solve your equation. So this equation is already equal to 0. So all you need to do, you need to find A, B, and C equals to 0 before you can do anything else. So A, B is negative 5, and C is 2. So you're going to plug in, and you're going to do the math to solve for x.